In the world of print, there are a few words and phrases that we hear on repeat with certain regularity. We talk about skills gaps, sustainability, workflows, and of course, automation. That word, automation, is thrown about as if it's some sort of panacea for all the troubles facing print. What exactly is it? What isn't it? How do you implement it? Can you have too much of it? And where does that other oft-repeated word, AI, come into the equation? These were a few of the topics that we chatted about in this episode of the Digital Printer podcast, when I was joined by Amy Servi-Bonner from Printing United Alliance and Fabian Becker from Müller Martini. There's further analysis of some of the topics in the last issue of the magazine, February-March 2026, and if this conversation stirs up any thoughts or ideas, feel free to comment or to send them to me. And if you'd like to sponsor this podcast and have your brand aligned with some of the most interesting discussions from the world of print, then drop me a line at chris.b@whitmar.co.uk. And now, without further ado, let's get into the world of automation. So I'm very grateful and lucky to be joined today by Amy Servi-Bonner, who's the Vice President Consulting for Applied AI and Printing Technology at Printing United, and also Fabian Becker, and I understand you're a Product Manager at Müller Martini, and both experts on your own domains and on the topic of automation. And I went to a keynote speech the other day, which was by one of your colleagues, Amy, Nathan Safran, and he was talking about automation now, not just being a kind of something that is nice to have, and not just about driving efficiencies, but it's almost like a survival strategy. It's something that you've got to be getting into in order to thrive in the modern kind of print marketplace. Mm-hmm. So where do we start with automation? I mean, is it a one thing you can just kind of do to connect up all your machines, or is it a broader philosophy? Is it a product? Where do we get started if we want to kind of engage in the automation conversation?
So my definition of automation is brutally simple. It's when a job moves from what I will call intent to delivery with the least amount of human touch. That's my definition of automation. Humans intervene to make decisions, but it's not for data entry. Again, they're involved. They're maybe reviewing things, but they're not entering the data. If a shop can run a standard repeat job without 12 emails and 3 spreadsheets, then they're getting close to automation. So, to me, that's what I define automation as. AI plays a role in the automation landscape, and it has in the print, specifically in the print automation area. There's kind of 3 areas that we tend to talk about relative to again, automation. People sometimes confuse them. So there's things like language and communication. So when we're talking about AI, getting involved with summarizing job history, maybe drafting some sort of a customer update via an email or something that a lot of people are really accustomed to using AI as a tool for. Answering internal questions about specifications, SOPs, and that sort of thing. That's kind of one area. AI also can play a role in decision support. It can help flag risks, on schedules and predict late jobs and patterns around, why and how jobs are late on the shop floor. Detecting, estimating drifts versus actuals, which is pervasive in the print and packaging space. And then making recommendations on maybe which types of jobs could be grouped, for some efficiency. And then the third thing is, automating kind of the orchestration of things. So triggering workflows based on certain signals, or routing tasks to the right queue, and maybe even detecting exceptions, early and having those types of things be escalated. So, the key here is automation should never be perceived as replacing an operator, and certainly AI should not replace the operator, but it should, kind of affect the chaos that surrounds, people within this industry. And, whether it's an operator, it's a CSR, even somebody in quality or finance that's trying to close jobs. Um, so that's kind of how we perceive things, and our messaging reflects just that.
Fabian, from a perspective of an OEM, you're building the machines, you're building the software that runs the machines. Do you think that there is that kind of sense of chaos that people feel like things are out of control and that your job as a manufacturer is to help them regain control?
To a certain amount, I would say yes. So we are seeing the tendency that the jobs are getting shorter runs. So which means you have a lot more jobs getting processed over the same duration of time, which leads to more work to be done, like, for example, set up machines. And as already mentioned from Amy very nicely, we want to have the least amount of operator inputs be done
Mhm.
so that standardized workflows can run automatically through the whole process. So it is a support to help out in, let's call it, the chaos of the production side.
Do you think, though, that we're getting to a stage now in print where it's no longer about investing in huge machines, or, well, I mean, you do have to make investments, capital investments, but it's about marginal gains. So automation is about saving you 30 seconds here, saving you a little bit of manpower over here, closing the skills gap perhaps over there. And it's all just these small things that are helping organizations run more fluidly and just increasing efficiency and productivity sort of 1% at a time.
From my point of view, it adds up.
Yeah.
So what we are trying to achieve is to have an integrated solution, like the whole line working seamlessly together, which helps the operator to focus on the more quality and planning tasks due to the fact that he has more time now, that doesn't have to intervene with the machines, which gives it more throughput time and more uptime on the machines itself. So that's like the little gains that you get with automation, and it sums up at the end. You have much more time on your hand.
Okay. So, and is that time that you can spend doing more work, or is it time that can be spent kind of doing more of what your skilled operators are good at, which is the kind of sweet spot?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, you gain time for the quality aspects of the production and as well on the more planning and strategic part. And if you have a very skilled operator, he has more time to make the adjustments on the machine itself. So once that whole workflow is in motion, he can set up the machine precisely and the machine just runs smoothly through.
That's clear. And Amy, you talked about communication and, AI, automation, they seem to be things that everyone is talking about at the moment. Everyone is bringing out their own tools. And even though there is, obviously conversations about APIs and things like that, is there a danger that there are going to be too many automation tools on the market? And so you're going to end up with kind of data and information being siloed, and, getting all of these tools to work fluently together is going to be a bit of a hurdle.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you can over automate a lot of processes. My years of experience on the ERP side, which is, where I spent almost 27 years prior to jumping into the AI pool, we saw over and over again, people just assuming that you could, uh, implement a new system and it was gonna be the moonshot that everybody was expecting. And, what ended up happening is you only saw certain wins in certain parts of the business. But, there was an expectation that we were gonna throw automation into the mix and it was, going to be the holy grail. Um, so, y you know, nobody can anticipate right now exactly where AI is going to be, um, you know, a win for in everybody's business. But what I can tell you is there's some things right now that are probably even more important than automation and even the discussion around AI, and that's governance and that is strategy. So, um, you can undergovern, you can automate workflows without standards, you can create fast mistakes at scale if you don't govern. You know, I oftentimes tell people again back to the over automation, the goal is not maximum automation. The goal needs to be very resilient automation. So, if automation can't handle exceptions, it's very fragile. So, think about automation without governance is like putting like a turbo on a car with like loose lug nuts, for example. It feels faster right up front, but then, until some like the wheel starts to pass you, when you're driving. That's kind of what automation without governance looks like.
Do you think there's a danger there? I was talking to someone this morning and they print 35,000 separate items, personalized items every day. And they have to have very strict guidelines. So even though that these items are all different, they fall within a very kind of narrow margin of what can be changed, what can't be changed, because they don't have time for exceptions. They don't have time to deal with all of those things. And no matter how good AI gets at dealing with that kind of stuff, there is always going to be, whether or not you've got room and the people to deal with each of those exceptions. And do you think having those kind of guardrails in place that kind of limits the kind of flexibility that maybe are necessary to automate everything, are they going to restrict what is possible within a business? The more you automate, are you actually limiting what you can do in terms of opportunities, revenue streams, new ways of operating, that kind of thing?
The real limitation is not the technology, it's the encoding tribal knowledge, the tacit knowledge that people have, that right now the system, whether it's a true technology system or the processes by which a company interacts with clients and in projects, if that is in their head and they don't have it written down somewhere or they're not sharing that information, that's actually more limiting than putting the guardrails up around what you can and cannot do. So, when you think about this industry and the amount of folks right now that are in charge of certain departments running, entire operations. They've been in it for how many years? 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that information, if it's not somewhere, encoded, as I like to say, it's going to be really, really difficult for AI to learn that. So you're already kind of restricting what actually happens, so that these technologies and systems can actually learn from. So it won't. I don't see it being again. The technology itself. It'll be the people that either feed it or don't want to feed it. That will be actually more detrimental to the outcome that people have interacting with customers using AI and or
Yes.
automation.
So it's almost like a cultural issue. You've got this
Absolutely.
kind of aging, well, I hate to say it, aging workforce. I don't want to
Yeah.
be discriminatory about people, but they've got
Sure.
tons and tons of knowledge. Fabian, you're dealing, or you work for Müller Martini, who have very tough machines which have been out there 20, 30 years and very experienced operators. How are you able to introduce new tools and convince people who've been using these big metal machines for years and years that this is the way forward and that they need to embrace this kind of new culture of automation and usability?
It is sometimes a little bit of a challenge,
Yeah.
to be honest, because the mentality is a little bit of never change a running system. But we are at a time in which the automation part is basically not really optional anymore if you want to stay competitive. So in the needs of that, the benefits of the system itself it's the selling point to keep going and to try it out and to focus on improving the processes. So once, let's say, we see that, or we can make our customers to see that, the whole idea like forms and they start to adapt. It is a challenge, but once the benefit is seen, they take or they start to use the systems itself.
Fantastic. And is it, I mean, are people generally convinced that this is the way forward, or are those conversations quite difficult to have?
The thing we have is we have a lot of machines and different variations of the machines. So the automation part depends a little bit on the machines itself that the customer will use. That can reach from partly automated systems. So it doesn't have to be fully automated. You just automate specific tasks that occur over time. And then you have the full the digital productions, which basically leads to a lights out factory, and where the manual input is the most minimal as possible. So the goal in there is to have the customer put one PDF and the file in there, and at the end the finished book comes out, and the operator has to do basically the most minimum inputs itself. It just runs through. So it's a little bit of a question how a customer in the end wants to have his workflow implemented. The goal is to implement the right automations for every customer.
Given that every customer is different, then presumably there is no kind of off-the-shelf solution that you can just apply to all. How much of this is about consulting? How much of this is about relationships? Because if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So it's you have to choose the right tool for the job. I guess there's, even with AI and all its capabilities, you can't just plug it straight in and expect everything to suddenly work. How do you go about creating a model that will work for everyone, that also includes that kind of flexibility and ability to change and adapt?
In our case, we have a lot of standardization protocols in place. So like file systems, JDF and JMF is mostly proved this works in the industry. So with the goal to have a very strong partnership with systems that are on top of our system, because it's like layered, you have the top planning part, and then you come to the whole processing, and at the end you have the machine layers. So we are in between the top level and the machine layers in between there. So the whole connection in between is like a whole, you have to have your partners which are involved, and then have the discussions how you want to proceed in every workflow. That's how we handle it here mostly.
Is that leading us towards a kind of open framework for industry-wide open framework for development, do you think? Are we going to see universal tools that work with everyone? What do you think, Amy? Are you seeing this? I mean, I know I saw some Connect with EPS and graphic communications that they've got very open architectures with some of their tools. Is that going to be the industry standard, do you think?
I don't think we know yet. I think that right now what people are most concerned about isn't actually the technology. It's how what the next step is. So they're convinced that automation and specifically AI is not just a path forward. It's survival. It's survival and service. And so how far to take it, how fast to do it, whether it will break the quality of work that they put out, whether it will break their culture, whether it will cost them, control over things. That's actually probably more of the framework that I could see, becoming part of the discussion more than the technology. Print leaders right now they believe the automation is necessary because they know that labor is tight, turnover is real. Customers expect faster turnaround and real-time visibility on things. We're still seeing people who are lagging with, customer facing tools like, portals and, um, things that again, you're interacting with your customers, job complexity, margins are thin, things like that. All these things they get all of that. So the direction is agreed on. Where the framework that I see really being mission critical right now to establish is on the execution side of things. So you're going to hear, two camps right now. Like, we need automation, we need fewer handoffs, we need more, better predictability and things like that. And then you have the other camp where their automation is fine until it messes with quality, or they're worried about the weird job or this finishing nuance, or promises that they're making to customers. So if we can, one of the things that Printing AI is advocating for is the notion of sovereignty and getting out of using tools, specific tools. We understand that there's going to be AI built into machine, the equipment framework and software that supports the machines and the processes by which these companies, which is their lifeblood. But eventually, when you're talking about the way to keep yourself competitive, or to make sure that you are keeping up with the tech, the sovereignty aspect of AI is probably the most important thing that we message out with every conversation and every piece of news that we put out, or update, or educational information. So again, it's not just the tool set that people need to get excited about. It's a mindset shift that we have to start with. And that's where the framework actually, to us, is the most important thing.
So are you kind of saying that ultimately you can get your print workflow optimized perfectly, you can deal with every file type, you can minimize any kind of errors? So really the ultimate competitive edge is going to become the creativity of the business, the
Yes.
creativity of the designers. So
Yeah. Well,
so
and the strategy by which you plan for automation and AI. There still will be people in the industry that are going to resist this. They love the way they work. I've always done it this way, and those are the ones that will be the hardest to crack. Um, so again, it's not whether or not people want to automate. It's not whether or not people are debating, the validity of any of this. What's happening is they're trying to figure out what's next and how to go at it, and how to, um, you know, what tool set they're supposed to use, if they want to, consider AI or automation as tools, or they want to look at something longer term, which eventually everyone's going to get to, which is having their own AI system that's only looking at the data within their walls. So whether that's, you know, 20 different applications that AI needs to go and learn and read and understand, then that's 20 different systems. If it's 2 or 5, that's great too. The goal isn't, again, to put tools in people's hands so that they can just do one thing. It's to actually have AI and automation look at the entire ecosystem that's under their roof, let's say, and how to leverage the data that's in there, and making sure that those that have that tribal knowledge, that it's somehow, translated into information that AI can actually use. Because we can't, as of right now, I don't have a way to, attach something to someone's head and pull all of that industry information out. So there's so many things that have to happen before we can even get to the example you just described with the creativity aspect of it. It's the hard part. It's the exciting, the non-sexy stuff that we have to, build a foundation of and for first, before we can do any of the stuff is the entertaining things, that people consider AI and automation to produce.
yeah, Absolutely. So is there a sense that automation really is can be or has the potential to be quite empowering for business owners, for print professionals? Fabian, what do you think? Is it freeing? Are people now free to get on with doing business? Now that we're dealing with the kind of unsexy stuff, are people free to kind of explore and do more, be better?
I'm actually not really sure how to answer this question. Obviously, for being able to implement automation, you have to do all the boring stuff first, like the whole requirements engineering, and then figure out how the whole steps work beforehand, have the data transfer, put everything in line correctly so the systems can communicate with each other. And that's let's call it the unsexy part, because it involves a lot of specifications, a lot of work, a lot of partnerships, and that you have to talk to other partners about it. And this part is, I would say, the unsexy part of the whole process. Once this whole system is in place, I would say then the fun stuff begins, because you start to notice the shift from the hard work before and the investment in time take over to the automation part where stuff runs through without you having to touch anything.
And is it something that you could do gradually and adopt it gradually, just rather than having to, stop work for 6 weeks while you invest in all this new automation? Is there something you can kind of introduce the system over here and then upgrade it later? How would you do it? If I was a print business and I wanted to kind of update everything and make it much more automated, what would be the best approach for me?
Well, usually how we would do it is we will, first of all, try to understand how is your current process. So to understand how you're working right now. Then in which places that you face the challenges in the manual process. Then what are your goals? We need to know what would be your end desired goal for the whole automation system. So it can be more transparency. It can be more or less operator input. It can be more throughput, less stop times on the machine. So once we established a little bit the whole framework, what is there, what is the goal, then we start with the minimal implementation, like the MVP, and start to scale up from it. It's like we try to prove it works, and then we scale the whole automation system to the point in which was defined. That would be a little bit approach would work with.
But presumably that's different for everyone who wants to adopt a new technology. So it's about building a relationship with your supplier and your service partner. So what does a fully automated print business look like? Nathan Suffren said that only 2% of businesses they surveyed were fully automated. But what does fully automated even mean? But you talked about lights out factories, but is it literally a matter of the customer uploads a PDF that they've created on Canva, and then the next day, a letter arrives or a parcel arrives, and there's no human interaction? How does it work?
Let's presume the customer has a web shop which you can order books. Then the whole job will be generated. It goes through the system, automatically planned into the resource planning, selected into one path of production after you know what it is, if it's a hardcover book, softcover book, stitchlet. Put it to the right machine. The whole information transfer would be automatically between the systems. Organizes the whole jobs depending on different characteristics. So you have the most optimal sequence in jobs. Goes directly and automatically to the printing press. The whole web will be pressed and runs through a connected solution. And at the end, the book falls out and you already know where to send the book. That would be the absolute end goal. With the operator just having to keep track of that the machines are basically running and the quality is all right of the products that come out of the line.
But presumably there are going to be systems in place. I know there are, AI systems that can check print quality. So potentially that could be automated as well.
Exactly.
Presumably now you've got all these systems, they're collecting data as they go along. And there is a big requirement for organizations to be able to, prove their, for example, sustainability credentials to make sure that they're meeting local regulations and that kind of thing. And I guess a lot of this stuff is built into automation systems. You can track your waste, you can track your kind of use of substrates and inks and that kind of thing, energy consumption. Is there a danger that if you don't adopt some level of automation, that you're leaving yourself open to risk from punishment for non-compliance and that kind of thing?
Well, I think there's two kind of avenues here. So, um, I don't think these are separate initiatives. I think, one of the things that oftentimes people are still trying to battle around sustainability is how to protect margins by doing so. So yeah, I think that there is a risk to people, not kind of adopting either side of this. But it still really comes down to having a disciplined operation. So, i- i- AI will help reduce waste. It'll help reduce rework, which it will help reduce energy and certain things. Um, but print is already kind of a sustainability business when you think about it. So it's when you think about make ready waste and you think about misprints, you think about overproduction and some of these other things. That's kind of the map. And where AI actually helps sustainability in print is, when you think about, again, waste reduction through fewer mistakes. If AI can flag high risk jobs and before you burn a substrate, those are some example, or that's an example of one way that those two can tie together. When you think about better planning with fewer kind of rush jobs or hot jobs, that sort of thing. Late jobs create overnight shipping, which creates chaos. And, there's some things there that maybe AI can help signal and flag some bottlenecks early so you can avoid the scramble. Ink is a big one, obviously, and material optimization. So, AI can help standardize setups and reduce some variability there. It's not magic or anything. It's just kind of recognizing patterns and applying those patterns to settings and runs and outcomes. Predictive maintenance is another one, fewer service trips, that sort of thing. So, you know, generative AI can actually be very energy intensive. And the industry is starting to call out greenwashing when it comes to companies pretending that all AI is automatically good for the planet. So, you know, the rule sort of is right now where use AI where it can reduce physical waste, where it can reduce operational chaos, more than it adds like computing overhead, if you will. So, um, you know, you can't chatbot everything, but I think that's where people's mindset is right now. Is if I can, put a chatbot against something, it's going to give me sort of this clear sustainability gain. But you know, there's kind of an argument for different angles around that. So again, can AI and sustainability live together? And there's an angle, absolutely. But you can also over automate things, and that leads to more waste as well. So there's a trade off right now. And again, I don't think we know just yet where these two paths are going to meet up and break away and then meet up again and that sort of thing.
Yeah. What do you think, Fabian? Are you seeing kind of people expecting AI to be the answer to everything when actually there are kind of more appropriate tools that are going to be less energy consumptive, for example?
I can just speak for myself here.
Yep.
So for me, it's always a question how much effort you want to put into AI to have the outcome from the AI. So the whole data preparing, please, Amy, you correct me if I say something that's not correct. The whole data preparation process is pretty intensive. So it needs a lot of work and effort to generate that. In the end of the day, it's the goal to have some gains after you invested so much time into the whole generation. I think that's the question in between how much effort you want to put in and how much can you gain from the effort you put in there. So now for our case, we try to implement AI as well, especially in the part of the service, to be able to help customer out if they have facing issues with the machine, where they can help themselves by looking up information about certain things. Yeah, but as said, for me, it's a little bit how much effort you want to put in to have the benefits on the other end.
Yeah, I guess it's only as good as the data you give it or the information you give it. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. We've talked a lot about kind of managing chaos, and I suppose one of the things about running a business is you're always looking for more certainty. And to an extent, automation gives you that. You know that your machines are going to talk to each other, and the whole process, in theory, is going to run smoothly from one part to another. But we're seeing technological advancements now coming up at almost a daily basis, which also brings its own kind of sense of chaos. So if you are looking to invest and things are moving so fast and you're thinking, well, maybe I need to wait until next week or next month, how do you kind of navigate that kind of minefield when you think I could spend $100,000 over here, but who knows what's going to happen next month? It could already be obsolete. How do you manage that?
Well, I think that's exactly, what's happening is they're not resisting, leaders aren't kind of resisting the technology. They're resisting like the whiplash of everything, and we're seeing right now that, a month, the changes that are happening, are even, it's, if you wait a month, it's like waiting a year, anymore. And it's just too much too fast. Um, so, in this space, what we're seeing as well is, certainty is the product. Customers buy you because you hit the deadlines and you hold your quality and you keep your promises. And this rapid tech stuff makes people feel they're the opposite of that, like they're not in control. So, it creates the gap that is creates it's too many tools, too many opinions, too many pilots, not enough standards. Everyone's just tired right now of things. So, people are looking for certainty. They don't want novelty, right now. So the best way that we see to create that certainty is to build a very stable operating system, right? So your operating system isn't like, I'm not talking about Windows or, iOS. I'm talking about standardizations, to the point of data, clean data definitions, clear ownership of data, one single source of truth, or, at least identifying what that source of truth is if you've got multiple sources of truth. Like you got some point, you got to get one. How do you handle exceptions? If those tools are stable, then you can make these changes in your ecosystem without breaking the business. We also, back to the framework you had talked about before, come up with some sort of like a decision framework. So, we help with that quite a bit. Where does rework happen? Where does waiting happen? Where do handoffs happen? Can we measure things in 30 days and in 60 days, that sort of thing. And then, you know, permission levels for AI really, it's how fast can you move without betting the planet. So, there's some things there that we can help companies with. And limiting the number of things that you do. When we go through our readiness assessments, we're really looking for use cases that come up that are different per company. because everything that we do has to tie back to the P&L. If AI cannot tie back to the P&L, I say it's just entertainment. And so if companies can get down to, one or two things that can really become active experiments or, proofs of concepts, that you can run, with against time and again, the chaos of of your business, um, you will see gains. But if you try to, like we say, boil the ocean all at once, it's going to be continuing to be very overwhelming for people. And it's very risky to take projects on like that, whether it's AI, whether it's the replacement of an ERP system, even if it's equipment, you can't do everything at one time. So, um, we advocate for, again, for people to realize that level of certainty. It's to just build some stability first, get that foundation in place first. Whether that even again relates to getting data off machines, shop floor data collection's a big one right now. I cannot tell you how many people we talk to that don't even know if they're making money on jobs. So all of those things have to be put in place first, before anything happens. So that should kind of calm people down. That's controllable. That's their data in their, within their walls. And that should hopefully put people on the right path. So they're not getting overwhelmed with the tech side of things and the change at which, this era is bringing to all of us. It's risky, scary, and it's overwhelming.
It really is. I mean, Fabian, you're a product manager. Do you find that people are a little bit overwhelmed, and that you are having to kind of reassure people that just stay calm, kind of be focused, don't get distracted by all the noise?
I feel a little bit that people are a bit overwhelmed with all the tech stuff, especially because it's a lot to take in. So on every end, you have some piece of software you have to take care of and be aware of it and navigate with it. Yes. So it's actually, as Amy said, you have to give the customer a little bit the anchor point in which
Right.
the whole chaos is like bringing calm into it, hit your deadlines, hit your milestones. And so to make it for the customer controllable, as you said, basically.
Fantastic. So in a way, it's kind of a bit like putting blinkers on and just saying, look, this is where you need to focus right now. Then, like almost like a kind of step-by-step process. Ignore what you're hearing all around you, because right now it is just a lot of noise. But if you want to kind of automate your business, then you need to be very measured and quite intentional and stoic about it, I guess, in a
Right.
way.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate your time. I think that's been really useful conversation. And like you said, I don't know where any of this is going to go, but obviously we're going to have to embrace it. You can't not get on board with it, because the world is changing pretty quickly. So Amy, Servi-Bonner, thank you so much. Fabian, Becker, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that. And if you're watching this on video, you'll see that I'm broadcasting from the new basement podcast studio here at Digital Printer Magazine headquarters. And if you're listening, you'll just have to imagine the atmospheric jazz club vibes of our state-of-the-art facility. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any comments or thoughts, feel free to post them or to send them to me at chris.b@whitmar.co.uk. And similarly, if you'd like to support what we do and sponsor the podcast, then please do get in touch. Until next time.